So welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thanks for coming back. Today's an exciting one, but first, two very quick questions. Do you love action? Do you love spy movies? If you answered yes to either of those questions right then, you will absolutely love this movie. I believe that this movie is probably the third best action movie of the last decade and probably the best spy movie since Skyfall came out. And that movie, as you've seen from the thumbnail, is Atomic Blonde. The film's directed by David Leitch, which is a name you might recognize. He co-directed John Wick, and he was also a famous stuntman himself to a lot of famous actors, Brad Pitt, Claude Van Damme, a lot of others. And because of that, he knows how to meticulously choreograph fight scenes. Think John Wick, very realistic. He knows how to get the best out of his actors and doesn't rely on gimmicks as much as well-trained actors committed to their own stunts. The film follows undercover British MI6 agent Lorraine Broughton, who is sent to Berlin on the eve of the fall of the Berlin Wall in the late 1980s to team up with fellow MI6 agent David Percival. Their mission is to recover a missing list of double agents, which would destroy Allied intelligence efforts during the Cold War should it fall into the wrong hands. So full transparency before I get to the verdict at the end of this film, I bloody loved this movie. It oozes cool from start to finish. It has amazing fight choreography, which I'll get to. It has a killer soundtrack. It's sort of framed by the 1980s bangers throughout. And the cinematography is really gorgeous as well. It's got the muted sort of browns and greys of Berlin, and that's sort of juxtaposed against all the neon from the fancy glamorous hotels and bars they go to throughout it. It's just really good to look at. The story is also very intriguing. It's a proper spy thriller. It's espionage at its finest. There's a lot of characters. You don't really know what everyone's motives are, and you can tell that everyone, including Lorraine, who's the main character, is hiding something from you, which you try and work out throughout the film while the fight scenes and all the gorgeous cinematography are going on. Simply put, it's a great combination of aesthetics, story, and action with fantastic pacing throughout. So the cast literally and figuratively kick butt here. Charlize as the lethal, beautiful agent, and James McAvoy as the grimy, dirty undercover cop who's been behind enemy lines for a little bit too long. They're both fantastic, and Charlize gets to flex her action muscle again, extending her lead, I think, as the greatest female action star of the 2000s. I think her resume is pretty unassailable at this point. So now, onto the fun stuff. The fight scenes. These are incredible. There's a good combination. There's car chases in this. There's covert hits carried out by sort of undercover operatives. But then there's also the brutal hand-to-hand, drawn-out combat scenes where a lot of people get seriously injured. And I think this is where David Leitch makes his mark. If you've seen the John Wick movies, you'll know that drawn-out, long, choreographed fight scenes are his thing, with an emphasis on the realism during the fight. And what I mean by that is when people get injured, they then have to accommodate for that injury and then, I suppose, adapt their fighting style to fit that. So it's not like a superhero movie where a bunch of henchmen rock up and the superhero takes out 50 of them without a sweat and then keeps on going. In this, when Lorraine gets hit, which she does a couple of times, she gets seriously injured and has to adapt and sort of gut her way through it as you would in a real life fight. These scenes wouldn't be possible if all of the actors within the film didn't put in the extensive combat training that they did. I know that Charlize Theron actually went and trained with Keanu Reeves because he was training for John Wick 2 at the time. Power couple. And there are talks of there being a crossover movie between the two franchises, which I think would be amazing. This makes for some incredibly entertaining but brutal action scenes throughout, including the staircase scene towards the end of this movie, which I personally think is one of the greatest action scenes or continuous action scenes ever shot, which is a big call, but it really is that good. It's so entertaining. Admittedly, these scenes won't be for everyone because there is a lot of blood as Lorraine racks out a pretty impressive body count throughout the movie. But if you're into action films, this really is peak action scene choreography. And Leitch has also laced the fun 1980s songs throughout these fight scenes, which adds to them and gives them an atmosphere and energy that they wouldn't otherwise have. Now, I haven't discussed the plot in much detail, and I won't go into it too much, but that's just because I think it's secondary to the action in this movie. But that doesn't mean it's bad. In fact, I think the plot itself is a really good thriller. Easy enough to follow without it being too simplistic. The key question throughout the film is, who is the mole? As Lorraine tries to find out who sold out MI6 to the Germans. Trying to work this out along with the characters while trying to pinpoint the individual characters' motives is a lot of fun, and the pacing is also fantastic throughout this. There's quick jumps between important scenes, and then any of the dead space is filmed with the really funky soundtrack. Before I get to the final verdict and rating, I do 3 movie reviews every single week of classics and new releases, hopefully to make your streaming a bit easier. So if you've enjoyed the video, please hit the like and subscribe button. It would be greatly appreciated. Alright, on to the verdict. So what's the verdict? This isn't a massive surprise after my gushing review, but I highly recommend this to any of you who are action movie fans. The action scenes are incredible, the pacing's great throughout, the cinematography is beautiful, and I also believe that Charlize plus action at this stage is almost mandatory programming, except maybe the Fast and Furious movies. And the sequel for this also got greenlit by Netflix. So because of that, I give this a rating of 8.5 out of 10. So what did you guys think? Did you really like this? Do you think this is incredibly underrated? Every single person I talk to and everybody I tell to watch this movie has never seen it before. So I assume that this is incredibly underrated for how good it is. Do you like Charlize in action movies? Do you think that she is the best female action star? There are a couple of competitors, but I think she's still got them covered with her incredible action resume. That's all from me, guys. Until next time, that's a wrap. See you guys.